Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, recently put out this immigration video, and it's gotten picked up all over the internet. Even Americans are talking about this video. And I want to discuss this because all the criticism of this video, I actually do agree with. The main criticism from what I've seen is that Trudeau is sitting down and essentially talking about solving the problems that he and his government are certainly in part, probably to a large extent, responsible for creating. And I agree with all those criticisms. So I'm going to cover it from a little bit of a different angle, from the COVID lockdown angle, which I think is very legitimate and very real. And it just, I know people are maybe sick of talking about it from this angle, but I think it has to be said. I don't hear anybody sort of making this criticism. Now, one thing I want to say, to be fair, somewhat, or at least charitable, I guess, to Justin Trudeau, if you take this video totally out of context of his leadership and Canada, how the country is doing, I think these videos from politicians are actually positive. So I'll give him a little bit of props on that case. And again, the only way you can really be like too charitable at this is if you take this out of context with what's happening in Canada. Now, the problem I want to say is that he uses the thing of, oh, we had this massive COVID pandemic, and a lot of these immigration stats, or a lot of these, our immigration policy following that was in response to the COVID pandemic. Canada did not need to lock down as aggressively and for as long as it did. It was ridiculous. We had no creativity in terms of our lockdowns. Like, very early on in the pandemic, a decision should have been made. Let's protect vulnerable populations, but let's be creative with how we keep our economy going. I don't think when Canada had these massive lockdowns that ran probably longer than most other countries in the entire world, like we would be right towards the top, that was a choice. I don't think that can be used as an excuse now for another problem coming up with just way too much immigration way too quickly. And one more quick comment before I turn it over to Justin Trudeau to hear him speak. To the people that say, oh no, the COVID pandemic, all the lockdowns, etc., were actually justified to protect vulnerable people, protect old people, etc. Again, we could have done that and kept the economy open at the same time, because the risk that we ran with those massive lockdowns is we made our economic crisis so much worse for young Canadians. It's so inexcusable, the situation we have in our country right now. The average home is close to $700,000. Since the pandemic, the fertility crisis in Canada has gotten even worse. The economic outlook for the average young person in Canada is terrible. I mean, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you probably don't need me to say this to you because perhaps you're already aware of this, but we're running very close to basically an entire generation of Canadians having no hope. I mean, for many of them, they already don't have that. It's no excuse. Like, there's such a massive downside on the other side of running this massive pandemic, where you have this huge group of people, maybe people between like the ages of like 20 and 40, who just have no hope. There's a massive potential for a total lost generation of Canadians that have to like move to Mexico or do something incredibly drastic or just live in their parents' basement for the rest of their lives. This is totally unfair. Something has to be done very, very quickly. So you can say, oh, let's just shut the economy down, let's shut our restaurants down, etc., and let's just do everything we can do to protect extra people. My argument is we could have done that anyway and kept the economy going. We have such a ridiculous situation now for young people. It's completely unfair. I could go on and on, but I'll let Justin Trudeau get to his point.
Plan. But after the pandemic, our economy came roaring back quickly. We needed a lot of workers fast.
Canada.
Every sector has different wants and needs when it comes to immigration. But after the pandemic, they all came to us with the same message. After 2 years with closed borders, we need more people, more workers, fast. So we brought in more workers. And it was the right choice. It worked. Our economy grew. Restaurants.
And so just like you said,
stores reopened.
All these things reopening. Look, I certainly agree that at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of these closures were justified. But in Canada, it went on for so long. I'll argue this for sure. Way too long. There was not enough creativity brought forth about how do we keep young people in the economy? How do we keep things running? The morale of Canada just shot down so much, and I don't think it's at all justifiable to use that as an excuse for another problem popping up about just saying, like, even if you take everything Justin Trudeau said in that video at face value and just take his word for it that basically his analysis is accurate and correct, etc., even take as even accept his premise that the immigration was justified. The pandemic that we did in Canada was ridiculous. It was so long. If you compare that to other countries, like even America, our southern neighbor, our lockdowns were way more aggressive than theirs were. So I do not believe at all that you can just say, oh, well, we had this massive pandemic, so that's why we had this new problem now with all this new immigration. Like 97% of the increase in our population growth last year was from immigration. Only 2.5% roughly was from natural increase. That is incredible. And if you remember in the pandemic, I mean, again, like some of this closures, masking, social distancing, I agree that some of it was justified, but it went on for way too long. And a lot of it was just like this virtue signal. And I don't even know how you can argue that, because do you remember this happened in the Black Lives Matter protest? This is right in the June roughly of 2020. Justin Trudeau, look at, he's a massive crowd of people protesting Black Lives Matter. So as everything was shut down, Ontario was a massive lockdown. BC as well. A lot of our major populated areas in Canada, Quebec, people couldn't go to work. Restaurants were totally closed. Many of them will never come back. I mean, is this responsible? I think certainly not. And to be honest, I think probably the worst thing in Canada that I've ever seen in my lifetime is the fact that in the middle of all this pandemic, Trudeau called an elective, optional election, and he won. I cannot believe that actually happened. That we are in the middle of this pandemic, as it says here on Wikipedia, faced public blowback for holding an election in the middle of a global pandemic due to the expectation that blah, blah, blah. But so he did receive criticism for this, but hardly enough. Like in Ontario, there were schools being closed down. Your surgeries and stuff were being pushed back way farther. You couldn't go to a gym at all for most of the time, or this on-again, off-again lockdown thing where you have to go wear a mask, social distancing, gyms outside. Even after the election, there wasn't done. There was like on-again, off-again lockdowns. They came back in after the election. After the election, still, there were vaccine passports. International travel was blocked off, which Trudeau even mentioned in that video, like in that immigration video. Canada's lockdown was so aggressive, and just to use that now as a crux for this new problem to say, okay, now we have this massive labor shortage, let's just pump up our immigration. I don't like that. Like, as I said, places like Florida, places in Europe, not everybody locked down as aggressively as Canada did. And I want to be clear, I don't think like we should have done what Sweden did, which is just no lockdown. Some of it was justifiable. We went way too long. It was such a politically charged issue. There was such a virtue signal. Like if you still see in Ontario, people still talk about COVID all the time. British Columbia as well. So I just wanted to make this video basically saying that I do not buy the sort of excuse, the line, whatever you want to say, that this has had to be done because of a response to our COVID policies. I don't like that. Like if there was a different government that did those, I think that's reasonable, but I don't think that's reasonable at all for Justin Trudeau to make that claim that this was a response to all the COVID lockdowns. So anyway, with that said, I'll finish the video here. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have a great day.